Hello and welcome to Standard Voice Television Global News today, 30th April 2026. Equivalent Islamic calendar, 13th day of Zulqa'dah, 1447 after Hijrah. I am Hamida Muhammad Idris. In the headlines, President Tinubu names Umar as new Petroleum Regulatory Authority chief and appoints Bianca as Foreign Affairs Minister. The government declares Friday, May 1st as public holiday to mark International 2026 Workers' Day. Presidency pledges crackdown on Plateau attackers and approves 2 billion naira relief. On the international scene, United Nations warns US-Iran fallout could push 30 million people into poverty. And on sports updates, Falcons to meet Sudan or Comoros in 2028 Olympics Games qualifiers. These and more news will be coming to you in the bulletin. Please stand by. Thank you for joining, and now the news in details. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has approved the removal of Said Mohammed as the authoritative executive of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority (NMDPRA) in the public interest. Special advisor to the President on Information and Strategy Bayo Onanuga, who disclosed this in a press statement, said that Tinubu nominated Rabiu Abdullahi Umar as the new chief executive of the NMDPRA, subject to Senate confirmation. This decision made pursuant to the Petroleum Industry Act 2021 is aimed at strengthening regulatory effectiveness in the midstream and downstream petroleum sector, in line with the renewed hub agenda. The statement said President Tinubu has also appointed Bianca Odumegu as Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs following the resignation of Yusuf Tugar, who stepped down to participate in the 2027 elections. In the same vein, Tinubu has nominated Ambassador Shola Akinkolonela as the new Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, subject to Senate confirmation. Senate has summoned former Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL), Mele Kyari, and other persons serving officials to appear before it within 2 weeks over alleged 210 trillion naira unremitted funds uncovered in audit reports. The Senate Committee on Public Accounts issued the summons and also treating a warrant of arrest against the current NNPCL Group Chief Executive Officer Bashir Bayo Ojulari over his persistent disregard for legislative summons. The order was issued on Wednesday during an investigative hearing at the National Assembly on the audited financial statement of the NNPCL covering 2017 to 2023. It was gathered that this session ended abruptly after the committee refused to entertain representatives of the oil giant in the absence of both the Group Chief Executive Officer and the Chief Financial Officer. Loyalists to Peter Obi and Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso have called on the opposition to adopt a southern presidential candidate, intensifying talks about coalition building ahead of the 2027 general elections. Meanwhile, opposition parties, including the African Democratic Congress (ADC), the New Nigeria People's Party (NNPP), and the Social Democratic Party (SDP), differed on whether the president ticket should be zoned to the north or the south. The National Publicity Secretary of the ADC, Bolaji Abdullahi, said the party is not committed to zoning, but to the electoral viability of the contestants. The meeting resolved to work towards presenting a single presidential candidate against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The National Coordinator of the Obedient Movement Worldwide, Yunusa Tanko, and the National Publicity Secretary of the Obi Kwankwaso Movement, Justin E.J., emphasized the need to respect Nigeria's informal zoning arrangement in the interest of fairness and national balance. The government has declared Friday, May 1st, public holiday to commemorate the 6th International Workers' Day. The Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, made the announcement on behalf of the government in a statement signed by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Magdalene Ajani. He also congratulated workers nationwide, commending their contributions to national development, noting that the dedication of workers remains vital to the country's growth and economic progress, urging them to sustain values of patriotism, productivity, and intelligence. Tunji also reaffirmed the government's commitment to improving workers' welfare, enhancing security, and creating an enabling environment for economic expansion. The minister, however, called on Nigerians to remain peaceful and law-abiding during the celebration, encouraging citizens to reflect on the importance of unity and hard work in nation building. In another development, federal government has expressed worries over the worsening out-of-school children crisis, noting that about 15 million children were currently out of school. The Minister of Education, Maruf Tunji Alosa, who made this known at the 2026 Basic Education in Nigeria Boots Camp held in Jos Plateau State capital, he stressed that credible education data and accurate learner tracking remains critical to solving Nigeria's long-standing education challenges, including persistent gaps in foundational literacy and numeracy. Alosa, however, said Governor had intensified nationwide effort to tackle the crisis through data-driven reforms, stronger collaboration, and targeted investment aimed at expanding access to education and improving learners' outcomes. On his part, the Plateau State Governor Caleb Mutfwang, who was presented by his deputy Josephine Pio, cautioned that out-of-school children crisis pose serious social and economic risks, including poverty, insecurity, and social exclusion. Broadcast Media Africa has raised worries over the growing dominance of global digital platforms and their impact on Africa's local broadcasting and media ecosystem. The new industry report noted that based on findings from the 2026 survey regulating Africa's broadcasting and media sector in the digital ecosystem, highlighted a wide imbalance between international streaming and online platforms and domestic media players, which is increasingly influencing revenue flows, audience behavior, and regulatory effectiveness. According to this study, over 70% of stakeholders believe the national regulators have limited or no effective control over global digital platforms, many of which operate across borders with minimal local accountability. This lack of oversight is contributing to an uneven playing field where local broadcasters are subject to stricter regulatory requirements while competing with largely unregulated international services. The report added that this disparity is not only regulatory but economic. The news is coming to you on Standard Voice Television. So to come in the news. Presidency pledges crackdown on Plateau State attackers and approves $2 billion relief. On the international scene, United Nations warns US-Iran fallout could push 30 million people into poverty. And on sports updates, Falcons to meet Sudan or Comoros in Olympics. These and more news will be coming to you after this short break. To stand by. Welcome back from that short break, and now the news continues. The government is planning to deploy the full instrument of power against any persons identified as instigating or supporting the recurring violence in Plateau State. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who disclosed this during his meeting with leaders and stakeholders from the state, pledged that once troublemakers and provocators are identified, the government will act decisively against them. The gathering had Governor Caleb Mutfwang and all living former governors of Plateau State, including the national chairman of All Progressives Congress (APC), Netanyahu Wadda. He also approved $2 billion in relief support for victims of the March 29 attack in Angwan Rukuba, just north local government area of Plateau State. Tinubu ordered the governor to identify and name agents so they could face the full weight of the law, and also called on Plateau's leadership to make justice, fairness, and the integration of other ethnic groups central to the state's peace-building efforts. Nigerian Army has confirmed before an Abuja High Court that there was indeed a plot to overthrow President Bola Ahmed Tinubu through a coup d'etat. A soldier from the Nigerian Army Corps of Military Police NEC MP, whose identity was protected by order of the court, testified against the 6 alleged masterminds of the alleged coup plot. The defendants in the charge are retired Major General Muhammad Ibrahim Ghana, retired naval captains Esmos Otegboya, Victor, 7 Police Inspector Ahmed Ibrahim, and 3 others Zakari Umoru, Bikar Kashim Gani, and Abdul Qadir Sani. Former Bayelsa State Governor Timi Perez Silva was also mentioned in the charge filed by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice. Consequently, Justice Joyce Abdul Malik admitted the document is evidence and marked them as exhibits for a hearing in the case has been adjourned to May 4th and 5th, 2026. A non-government attack Lilo village in Gusau local government area of Zamfara State on Tuesday hours after security troops appeared from the community. It was gathered that the villagers have fled to neighboring areas for safety as bandits attacked. A resident, Muhammad Sani Abdullahi, confirmed that the government had set Lilo village ablaze and pleaded with the government to help before they destroyed the town. Locals said troops had guarded Lilo since June 2019 but were evacuated around 10 p.m. on Monday. A source claimed officers feared rainy season ambushes after a similar attack killed 6 personnel last year. The spokesperson of Zamfara State Police Command DSP Yazid Abubakar said Commissioner A.M. Bello deployed a tactical team to restore normalcy, while the military's Operation Fransanyama said it was not aware of any withdrawal. Moving to the foreign scene, United Nations Development Program UNDP has lamented that the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, which has sent the price of energy and fertilizer soaring, could plunge more than 30 million people into poverty. Head of the UN Development Program, Alexander De Croo, said its development in reverse on the sidelines of a G7 development meeting in Paris, adding that it took decades to build stable societies, to develop local economies, and it took only several weeks for war to destroy that. The crew stated that the UNDP did a study after 6 weeks of war and estimated that even if the conflict ended at the point, 32 million people would be pushed into poverty in 160 countries. The war has led to closure of Straits of Hormuz, through which it feeds other world's oil and liquefied natural gas flows in peacetime. The UNDP, however, says the war will have a profound impact on sub-Saharan African countries as well as in certain countries in Asia, such as Bangladesh and Cambodia. Finally, to the sport and scene, Nigeria's Falcons is expected to face either Sudan or Cameroon in the qualifiers for the women's football event at the Los Angeles 2026 Olympics Games. The pathway was confirmed after the Confederation of African Football CAF conducted the qualification draw in Cairo on Wednesday, outlining the routes for the continent's representatives. Nigeria women's national football team have been handed a bye into the second round in recognition of their pedigree and will begin their campaign against the winner of the preliminary fixture between Sudan and Cameroon. A total of 35 nations are involved in the qualification process, which will be contested over 5 knockout rounds on a home and away basis, with only 2 slots available for African teams at the Olympic Games. The 6 lowest ranked teams, including Sudan and Cameroon, will compete in the opening round schedule for June 2026, with the winners advancing to face top-ranked sides such as Nigeria, South Africa, and Ghana in the second round. Finally, on the news, the top stories again. President Tinubu names Umar as new Petroleum Regulatory Authority chief and appoints Bianca as Foreign Affairs Minister. The government declares Friday, May 1st as public holiday to mark International 2026 Workers' Day. Presidency pledges crackdown on Plateau attackers and approves 2 billion naira relief. On the international scene, United Nations warns US-Iran fallout could push 30 million people into poverty. And on sports updates, Falcons to meet Sudan or Cameroon in 2028 Olympics Games qualifiers. That is Standard Voice Television Global News for today. On behalf of the production crew led by Ilya Adama Auta, I am Hamida Mohammed Idris. Thank you for investing your time and staying with the news.